So guys, what is going on? I hope you guys are well. I hope you guys are staying safe. So guys, someone's sent me a video where Robert Garcia was saying that if Manny Pacquiao defeats Terence Crawford, he's the greatest of all time in his opinion. He was asking me what do I make of what he said? Is Manny Pacquiao the greatest if he was to defeat someone like Crawford? I never, when people say he's the greatest, I just don't know how you can measure that. I don't really like saying anyone's the greatest when it comes to putting a number on it, saying he's number one, number two, number three, because how can you really judge that? It's a matter of opinion, and everyone's got an opinion. I'm pretty sure everybody in the Philippines already thinks that Manny Pacquiao is the greatest, and many not just in the Philippines, maybe other people would think that he's an 8-division world champion. What he's done, he deserves to be the greatest now. But really, there's been too many great fighters for us to put a number, and I just think that we should appreciate all fighters, and Manny Pacquiao is one of the greatest. He deserves to be amongst that category. Now, to call him the greatest, that to me, I don't know. I can't really call anyone the greatest. Like, I think every great fighter, I think Floyd was great. I think Manny was great. Ali was great. Muhammad Ali, was great. Sugar Ray Leonard was great. Roberto Duran was great. Willie Pep was great. Sugar Ray Robinson was great. Many people regard him as the best pound-for-pound fighter ever. But if Manny Pacquiao was to defeat Terence Crawford, I've listened to many YouTubers, and a lot of them feel that Manny Pacquiao surpasses Floyd Mayweather. Floyd fans will say, well, Floyd beat Manny, but I do think that if he beats Terence Crawford, I do think he definitely has an argument of surpassing Floyd Mayweather. Just because of the fact that he would have beaten another current, pound-for-pound fighter at 42. I just don't think you can... anyone can argue with that. Pacquiao, for me, is what he did with Keith Thurman was silly, really. Let's be honest. Not many people were picking him, and he beat a guy that was a champion. Yeah, Thurman might have not been the best version of himself. Respective. Manny Pacquiao, definitely not the best version of himself. Manny Pacquiao was 40 years old. So, for me, Manny Pacquiao is an all-time great. He's one of the greatest, regardless if he beats Crawford or not. I personally think Manny Pacquiao's top 5, top 10 greatest fighter of all time. If he beats Terence Crawford, where do you want to put him? Top 3, top 2? I don't know. I don't know where you want to put Manny Pacquiao, but definitely I would view him, and I may already view him greater than Floyd, but I would definitely then openly say that I think that he's surpassed Floyd. Yeah, I know people are going to say Floyd beat him, but that doesn't necessarily mean everything. Pound for pound means a guy that moved up so many weight classes. Now, Floyd was a defensive genius, no doubt about it, but Floyd was the bigger man out of the two. Floyd was just as talented, and he was the bigger man. So people have to understand that. Floyd was bigger than Manny Pacquiao. Floyd didn't move up as many weight categories as Manny Pacquiao did. It's a bit like Roberto Duran and Sugar Ray Leonard. Now, Sugar Ray Leonard, in many people's eyes, was the better boxer. But what Roberto Duran in his career did, moving up so many weight classes, right, showed that many people ranked Roberto Duran higher than Sugar Ray Leonard. Why? Because they feel pound for pound, he's a better boxer. Pound for pound, what does pound for pound mean? Pound for pound means a guy that's moving up so many weight classes, dominating in weight classes where he shouldn't even be fighting. And Pacquiao's a great example of that. He's dominated in weight classes where he shouldn't even be fighting. Shouldn't be fighting at welterweight. He's too small, really. But that's just the greatness of the man. This is what I'm trying to say, that just because Floyd is probably the better fighter in terms of it's very difficult to, it's impossible, virtually very difficult to beat Floyd Mayweather. It's easier to beat Manny Pacquiao because Manny Pacquiao is more offensive, more exciting. He's defensively not as good. right? So when you're not defensively as good, you're susceptible, especially the way Manny fights, to being knocked out. And Manny has been knocked out. But you can't take away from his greatness. And pound for pound, what Manny Pacquiao's done, right, is great. He's great. You know, Max Kellerman made this argument a couple years ago that you can't really say that Floyd Mayweather pound for pound is better than Manny Pacquiao because of how many weight classes Manny Pacquiao moved up, right? And a lot of advantages that Floyd had over Manny were because of size. If you were to shrink Floyd to the same size as Manny, would he beat him? You know, see, everyone's got their own opinion. You see, like, I've got my opinion, you've got your opinion. These, you know, who you think is the greatest is subjective. Of course, like, not if like one of the guys that you think is the greatest is nowhere near the greatest. Like all of these names that we're taking, like Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Robinson, Manny Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather, Willie Pep, Henry Armstrong, you know, all these guys that, you know, names you take, you know, they were all the greatest. They were all part of that one of the greatest club. So Manny Pacquiao is definitely among those names. He's among those names. Now, to say he's the greatest among those names, I just think it's all subjective. That's why I don't really like saying he's the greatest. Even though I have at times said Ali was the greatest. But even that, because a lot of people would disagree and say Sugar Ray Robinson was the greatest. So, like I said, it's all subjective, man. It's all subjective. You can't really put a number on it. You can't really say, you know, you see some lists where I saw a list where BoxRec had Floyd Mayweather #1, Manny Pacquiao #2, and some people think that's ludicrous. Some people think that list is ludicrous. Some people don't have Floyd in their top 15, top 20. Some people have Floyd as #1. Some people have Floyd at #10. Some people have Floyd at #13. Some people may not have him in his top 20. You see, it's all subjective. Who you think is the greatest, who you think is the best, it's all subjective. That's why when Robert Garcia says that if Manny Pacquiao beats Terence Crawford, he's the greatest, that's his opinion. That's his opinion. You know, that's what he believes. He feels that being an 8 division world champion and then at 42 beating Terence Crawford deserves for him to be the greatest of all time. And listen, Manny Pacquiao is one of the greatest. I just don't like calling somebody the greatest, you know, because we don't know. We you know, you can't really put what determines who's greater. What determines how that Manny Pacquiao is greater than Muhammad Ali? What determines that Floyd is greater than Muhammad Ali? What determines that Sugar Ray Robinson is not greater than Manny Pacquiao? So what determines all of these things? You know, how are we judging all of these things? You know, they're fighting in different eras. Boxing was different back then. You know, I just don't know how you can categorically say, yes, he's the greatest because of this. It's all a matter of opinion. It's all a matter of opinion. So I just think we should appreciate all the great fighters that we've seen in boxing rather than saying, oh, who's the greatest? And, you know, we can have debates and say, you know, that's the whole purpose of my platform of, you know, Facebook groups and all of this other stuff, Instagram and all these things where we can have debates and debate all of that as long as it's respectful. Which a lot of people at times do cross the line, and it's not respectful. People get hurt about people's opinions when really, if I think Manny Pacquiao is not the greatest in terms of he's not #1, no one should get upset about it. It's an opinion. You know, I'm not saying he's not. I believe he's one of the greatest. I don't know how you could categorically say somebody is the greatest, that somebody is #1, especially guys that haven't fought in the same era. Like, I think it's more easy to compare Floyd and Manny, and even that's not easy. Because how do you compare it? Manny Pacquiao is an 8 division world champion. Floyd Mayweather is a 50-0, 5 division world champion, beating everybody, including Manny Pacquiao. So how do you judge these things? You know, it's very difficult. So the way I like to look at it is that I believe Manny Pacquiao is one of the greatest. He's among the greatest. And that's a big feat in itself. To say somebody is the greatest, I think it's I just think it's an opinion, you know. Nobody can categorically be called the greatest. It's an opinion. Right, it's an opinion of, it's my opinion that Manny's the greatest, or it's my opinion that Floyd is the greatest, my opinion that Muhammad Ali is the greatest, my opinion that Sugar Ray Robinson's the greatest. It's just an opinion. You know, can you say for sure that, you know, that his achievements are better than someone else's? someone being an 8 division world champion is a great feat for sure. But that doesn't make you the greatest, because there could be someone at heavyweight that it could be great, right? But he's at heavyweight, he can't move up weights. But what he was doing at heavyweight and the resume that he built at heavyweight was off the charts. See, it's difficult to compare and contrast, right? It's difficult to compare and contrast. Look at someone like Sugar Ray Robinson. Like, he dominated for so long. The guy was fighting, like, which fighter today fights 30, 33 fights in a year? Which fighter? Some of them don't even have that many fights in their whole career. Sugar Ray Robinson, at points in his career, were having 30 fights in 1 year. So, do you understand what I mean? That boxing was different in different eras. It's hard enough to compare people in their same era, let alone comparing them in different eras. Because the landscape and everything was different back then. So it's hard to compare. But the way I like to do it is just appreciate. Now, Manny Pacquiao, Floyd, all of these guys are one of the greatest. They are one of the greatest. There's no doubt. They will go down and remembered in history as some of the greatest boxing world champions we've ever seen. Without question. And a lot of this rubbish where people say, oh, Manny Pacquiao's lost 7 times. That's nonsense. It doesn't matter whether you lost. Manny Pacquiao came from an era where the O didn't really mean anything. The O only recently, because of Floyd Mayweather, and everybody wants to be like Floyd Mayweather, they think like Floyd Mayweather wasn't once in a generational talent. Not like, there's a lot of guys that are trying to be like him, but don't understand that he was once in a generational talent, and they're trying to pad up their records. Floyd Mayweather, people may say fought people past his back, but Floyd Mayweather fought everybody in his time, really. Yes, did he pick and choose? That's another question, but he fought everybody. And I personally believe that to say someone's the greatest, I think it's hard. I think we should appreciate all fighters and appreciate all great fighters. But I think to categorically say someone's the greatest, I think it's too hard to say. I just don't think anyone can say for sure. I think we've seen some great fighters in the history of boxing, and we should appreciate all of them. Because let's be honest, we have seen some, stellar. Roy Jones, for example. I don't think he quite had I think he was an unbelievable talent, but I don't think he kind of had he had the legacy of a Floyd or a Pac-Man. But for me, he was in his prime on another level. He was a genius. So some people may say he was the greatest. See, it's a matter of opinion. It's a matter of opinion. It's just who you prefer. It's who you prefer. Some may like Sugar Ray Leonard. Like, some people think Sugar Ray Leonard beats Manny Pacquiao and Floyd. So then the whole argument about, who's great. You see, it's very difficult, man. How can you compare and contrast eras and who's better and who do you think's the greatest? I just think it's all a matter of opinion. So I do think what Manny Pacquiao, if he was to beat Terence Crawford, like, that would just be a crazy, crazy achievement. And I do think you could definitely put him in the discussion of, is he the greatest ever? Definitely. But I think to categorically call anyone the greatest is too hard to do, really. I've enjoyed Manny Pacquiao's career. What a career. And he's given me, to be honest, when I look at it, like, at that real elite level, like one of the modern day greats of boxing, you'd have to say he's been the most exciting guy, really, in boxing at that kind of high-end level. Like, when you look at guys like Canelo, Mayweather, like, Manny Pacquiao's a lot more exciting than those guys were. And in his prime, he was devastating, man. He was really devastating. There was a couple-year period with Pacquiao where he was a beast. He was an absolute beast. And I do think that version of Pacquiao was something else. I'm a massive fan of Manny Pacquiao, but like I said, in terms of who's the greatest, I think it's a matter of opinion. I think Robert Garcia gave his opinion. I think many would agree with him. Many would disagree with him. It's just a matter of opinion. But leave your thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Where would you rank Manny if he beats Terence Crawford? Where would you rank him? Number 1? Number 10? Number 15? Where would you rank Manny Pacquiao if he beats Bud Crawford? Leave your thoughts. And guys, remember to please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.